Hello, everyone. I'm bringing you the this Infinity Does Not Exist number 5, and this is from the old conversations. So I he he was trying to convince me that infinity existed. So he did the thing where he said, "Well, if you learned it in school, then it must be real." And I came back and I said, when they made us do calculus in school, we didn't do infinity for more than a day, if at all. If you look at a calculus equation, they always limit the outcome or change the rules because infinity is unusual. Infinity is unusable. And then he brought up 2x dx equals x squared plus c. And I looked it up on Wikipedia, and based on the definition, I determined that you know, it was not, it had nothing to do with infinity because c is a constant, so it can't be infinity. So I was like, what I'm saying is that infinity is useless. If we don't understand it, can't define it, and won't even try to adhere to a real definition, then every problem that incorporates infinity is wrong. The only way it will work is if you said, is one a part of infinity? That's an easy one in theory, but not in practice. But 15x equals 2x plus 15, or a quadratic equation, has nothing to do with infinity. Each number is carefully limited and doesn't reach too high. And then he said again, we always use infinity, and I was like, yes, we do use infinity, but it's not actual infinity. It's a truncated, limited version of infinity, like all natural numbers, or only going to a certain number of decimal spaces, that was built just for that purpose. We can get the correct answer if the actual problem is limited to something that can be described or counted. I will see how infinity is the foundation of math, when I find a book on it. I do have that book right now. I haven't read it yet, but that would be akin to saying that God is the foundation of science. Pi is the same problem. We could divide every number of pi from now to the end of time, and pi would end when the last one of us dies. When I said trillions of digits long, I was only guessing. It would probably be 700 million for the average lifespan, birth to death, based on my calculator. It's actually uh, it's actually 1.5 billion, and that's being generous. But it'll probably come down to 700 million, as in what's the highest number that we can count to, that we can physically count to, counting one number at a time, incrementing one number at a time. So I told him I stayed away from real numbers, but the fact is that it's even worse for real numbers. If you were to calculate all the numbers between 0 and 1, you could never make it to the first number, because as soon as you put the first 1 after however many decimal spaces, you are no longer looking at infinity, because no matter where you put the first 1, it has to be broken down infinitely. So as long as life exists, we will never see the first infinite number between 0 and 1. Thus, infinity is useless. The infinity problems they gave us in school were laughable. I should have walked out the front door. Zero is different. You can have none of a certain item, but you can't possibly have nothing. No matter where you are or what your attributes are, you can never have nothing, because something is always occupying that space, whether you can sense it or not. And uh, I put, I put a word in quotes, and he tried to catch me and say, "You're just making up quotes. That nobody said that." And I told him that I put a certain word in quotes. I put foundation in quotes because I was paraphrasing and summarizing my own thoughts. and I call that Trismalga. I have a video about that on my channel. And I told him the literary term for that when you're quoting your own thoughts. But yeah, I was using it as a literary device. I never said that. I told him I never said that pi would end. I said that no sentient being will ever see the end of pi, so it cannot be infinite because no one will ever be able to verify that it's infinite unless it's actually not infinite, which is a paradox, you know. So we agree that infinity is far greater than any number sentient life could count to, which makes it unusable as the largest number because it is indeterminable or indeterminate. If I asked you what was 3 plus 5, you would say 8. But while you were calculating in your head, the number 5 magically turns into 12, making the answer 15. This is what would happen if you were trying to use infinity in a real, if you were trying to use a real infinity in a math problem. See, your answer was made wrong because there was no way to limit or even describe the number. The only reason why I used the problem to demonstrate that, the only reason why I used that, the only reason, yeah, the only reason why I used the problem was to demonstrate all of the problems they taught us about infinity in school were incorrect because they always limited or cut it off or just picked certain numbers. Basically, the problem I was describing was a problem of infinity itself. It's like Santa Claus. There are entire monuments dedicated to him. People celebrate him every year, even scientists do. But if you're trying to solve a physics problem, you can't solve it by saying how does Santa get to all of the how does Santa get to all of those houses in one night? Even if he was real, there would be no scientific way to prove it because no one has seen him. They've seen limited versions of him that are carefully controlled and utterly powerless, but they couldn't handle the real version. And then he said, you know, and then he said, you know, division by zero proves that infinity exists because if you if you divide by zero, it goes on forever. Well, when I was learning math in school, what they taught us was that if you divide something by zero, the answer is zero. Nowadays, if you they say that if you divide something by zero, then it's the wrong answer. It's an error. So so either way, that wouldn't be infinity. Uh, and I gave an example. I was like, if your hand is empty and I ask you to pair up the things in your hand with 5 things in the room, you would say I can't do it. Thus, the answer is zero for that item. I was assuming that anything divided by zero would be zero, but it's actually an error. It's an error. It's a wrong answer. I was thinking maybe I should write a book refuting all of the old greats and self-publish it. I don't think they would let me publish in a journal because I'm not a PhD recipient. And then I said, confusing? I confused you? Really? Basically, you started saying the stuff that I was saying. So I thought we were on the same page. This is the mimic fallacy at work. But I would get the word out faster using alternative methods as far as telling people about, infinity not existing. And I was like, I'll see what else I can uncover about math and physics when I read the books. So yeah, I mean I covered 3 sections, and this should take one more video and then I can move on to the new conversations, which is amazing if you haven't read the comment section on these videos. So yeah, and have a nice day.